Right. So we've been talking about the function of the operating system, and from where we've left off, you realize the operating system gives us several features to manage different parts of the hardware and also actually the applications that are running. And we want to talk a bit more about some of the features of the operating system. So if we have several tasks running, so let's say we may be printing something, we may, in this case, I would say, more simplified example where you have several prints waiting and then telling the order of what needs to be printed first. But in reality, we may have some printing job. We may be running Zoom, we may be running PowerPoint, we may be running different applications. And it appears as if all these are happening at the same time. Like, because as I talk, you can hear me and you can also see me. And I'm also recording things, which is saving on the hard drive. So the operating system is scheduling what needs to run and when it should run. So the processor can switch between these applications so fast that it appears as if they are running at the same time. So first, we want to jump on to another activity to answer questions on what we've just recapped. If you can, grab a pen and paper or get your Word document open or something you can type on or write on, and I will be carrying on in the next few seconds. We wouldn't pause to compare the answers, but you can actually put the answers in the chat window if you want. Happy to carry on? You ready? So question 1. Which of the following is not a function of the operating system? A. Deals with the transfer of programs in and out of memory. B. Controls the transfer of data to peripherals such as printers. C. Adjusts the bass level on a music file. Bass, different. Question 2. Which of the following is not an operating system? A. Bendix. B. Windows XP. C. Linux. Question 3. When the computer has to react with a guaranteed time to an input, which type of operating system is the best? A. Multitasking. B. Real-time processing. C. Batch processing. Can I go to the next slide? Yes, sir. Question 4. Which type of operating system allows multiple tasks to run at the same time? Each task taking turns using the resources of the computer. A. Real-time processing. B. Batch processing. C. Multitasking. Question 5. Which type of operating system will allow a number of users to use the same system at the same time? A. Multitasking. B. Multiprocessing. C. Multi-user. You write the answers down for yourself, and by the end of the session, you can paste it in the chat window and compare your answers with other people's answers. These are things you're doing for yourself. Happy to continue? Shall I progress to the next slide? Yes. Question 6. Which is the processing method where tasks are collected together, stored, and then processed in one go at a designated time? Multiprocessing, batch processing, real-time processing. Question 7. Which mode of operation could be described as the opposite of batch processing? Multiprogramming, interactive processing, multitasking. Next slide. Question 8. Which type of operating system would be best choice to control the braking system on a car? Real-time processing, multiprocessing, batch processing. Question 9. Which type of processing will be the most appropriate for printing the bank statement ordered by a customer each day? A. Multitasking. B. Real-time processing. C. Batch processing. Next slide. Question 10. Which type of operating system would be needed to allow students in a class to read a file that the teacher also had opened? A. Batch processing. B. Multi-user. C. Multitasking. Finished? Happy to move on? Happy to move on? Okay. So, I want to chip in something on real time. Okay? So, real-time operating system, because things have to be done in a timely manner. So if you have an operating system or software managing tasks that need to be done within a certain time frame. So let's say we've got an operating system that monitors a medical equipment, for example, in an intensive care unit, right? So if someone is in an intensive care unit and, for example, they have a medical equipment measuring their heart rate, for example. And that heart rate, if it goes below a certain rate or above a certain rate, the doctor should be alerted, right? And we say the alert, I'm just making this up, maybe the alert needs to happen immediately. And by measure of immediately, we mean, let's say, maximum 0.5 seconds, for example. This needs to happen because it's got to do with life, right? So mostly we say real-time operating systems do respond to certain deadlines. So because this definitely needs to happen, we can't miss it. This particular deadline is called a hard deadline. So for hard deadline, we cannot miss it. We have to meet it, right? For hard deadline, if the system does not meet hard deadlines, it fails. The system fails. However, we can have some that can be soft deadlines. So let's say not an intensive care unit and it's just request for lunch, for example. So same scenario, not an intensive care unit, but let's say request for lunch. They can press a button that will just alert the nurses to bring their lunch in. And because there are so many of them, even if they request, the nurses have some specific time, they bring them the lunch. So it's okay, right? So maybe we say the lunch need to be served between 2 p.m. and 2:30. Let me write my 2:30. So between 2 p.m. and 2:30, lunch needs to be served. So we have 30 minutes window that we can serve the lunch. So when it's 2 p.m. and then the patient say, ding, 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 bring me lunch, that can be missed, doesn't really, it can miss and then the system will not necessarily fail because we are still within the deadline. That's the permissible deadline, right? So the soft deadline, we miss it the first time, it's okay, kind of thing, right? Because it's not 2:30 yet. But here's the case. If we keep missing a soft deadline, it can become a hard deadline. So let's say by 2:30, this patient has not been served yet. Then it's become a hard deadline because it says we must serve this to the patients by 2:30, their lunch. So if by 2:30 and then we miss it, we most likely creating a hard deadline, especially if the patient's life depend on it. So even though soft deadlines, sometimes we can miss the deadlines and the system will not fail. If you keep missing a soft deadline, most likely the system will fail. So real-time operating systems deal with deadlines. They try to do things in a timely manner, depending on the constraints given, right? So if you are dealing with safety equipment, mostly you go for real-time operating system, or like things like security measures in cars. So if you have a software handling the security measures in cars, you may want to go for real-time operating systems. Well, the other things that may be handled by other embedded kind of operating system, not necessarily real-time, but mostly real-time or embedded systems do carry real-time operating system, or do work with real-time operating systems. Can I double check? Does that make sense so far?
Yes, sir.
Brilliant. So moving on with the functions of the operating system. We mentioned earlier when you connect a new hardware, I mean, it could be a mobile phone or any other device, but these days mobile phones use USB, so at least it will be recognized by the computer as an external storage. Most of the time they do get recognized as external storage. However, if you have something like maybe a special smartwatch, or let's say not just a special smartwatch, let me put that as the watch, or a camcorder or camera, or some device that is not in the standard mainstream, and then you connect to your computer, it will tell you device not recognized sometimes. Then these devices not recognized, then they normally come with, the devices come with CD-ROMs or USBs that you can use to load, they say load the driver software. After you load the driver software on your computer or install it, then you just say discovering new device, and then it will discover a new device for you, which will be, in this case, will be the smartwatch. So what happens in the background is that the driver software is actually a small program that will help the operating system understand how to communicate with the device that you have connected. So with this specific device, so that is why this specific device has its own drivers. So of course, the same brand and the same model, same driver will work for most of them. Right. Then we have the plug and play feature. So the plug and play also runs in the background to automatically identify devices. I'll just say commonly known devices or devices that have standardized way of communicating with the computer. So they say USB is plug and play. So you plug in your USB flash drive, and you realize straight away it gets recognized as an external storage device for you to use, because the plug and play works in the background to identify what device have you connected. It's a USB, treat it as a storage, or ask the user, what do you want to do? Open files, duplicate files, transfer files, or those kind of things. Makes sense so far?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, other things that the OS can help us to do, get access to internet. If you're using your machine, you're using Wi-Fi, at some point you click the Wi-Fi icon to connect to the internet. If you are plugged into your router, at some point you will just pop up something automatically configure it for you, or you can use the OS to even set peer-to-peer connection. By what I mean by peer-to-peer connection, if you get a LAN cable or even Wi-Fi, you can connect from one machine to another. If you're a Mac user like me, it allows you to use things like AirDrop to transfer files and all those kind of things. But with AirDrop, you identify which machine to connect to and other things. So giving you networking access, I'll just highlight just more on the networking part. So it gives you networking access, and also it gives you the ability to monitor the performance of the system. Because the OS is so close to the hardware and is managing the hardware resources. Earlier we mentioned that the OS manages memory and things like disk space, and we just talked about networking and of course how the CPU also runs. So it can actually give you an overview of this performance of these systems and how much memory is being used, which particular task is keeping the CPU too busy and other things. Just some utilities that we can make use of. So a few highlights in general: it helps us to manage files, to search for files, to view images, securing the computer with things like firewall. We'll talk about it in a minute. On installing stuff, if you're on Windows machine, you just do uninstall program. They give you a list of programs that have add remove program in the control panel. It gives you a list of programs that are already installed. If you are on Mac, you just open a file, File Explorer. You just open the file, and then you go to the application link, and from there you see all the applications that are installed for you, and you can delete them. Just select delete, and mostly that takes care of all the uninstalling for you. So it allows you to clean disks as well, defragmenting disks. So mostly as you have files saved on your hard disk, for example. So you've got some files saved on the hard disk, and over time you delete some file, and then also you add some new file, and also you delete other things as well. And some files may just be saved in completely different locations. So defragmenting, you are moving the files or reorganizing the content of the hard drive in such a way that it's a lot smoother to read from, and mostly your machine will run faster that way. So other things, diagnostics, backup, and other features that the OS allow us to use. Recording in Zoom, so that makes life a lot easier as well. I hope I recorded in Zoom. Yes, I did. Okay, so other things like running auto updates for you. OS handled that for you. I think if you are on Mac, then of course you are in luck, because Mac is completely free. With the OS is completely free, so mostly you can run updates to the latest update whenever it comes up. The only thing I'll say, and I always say, is be careful though. Some people do run into problems if they run the update too quickly before the update is, of course, has been tried and tested in the mainstream. Okay, so we have something called client and server. So you can have a dedicated machine and you can have, maybe this machine has movies stored on it, like Netflix. Now they have a larger cloud and other things that they use to manage these things. And you can have several computers. I should improve my drawing, isn't it? I think 2 is enough. Or let's put some tablet. I should have drawn tablet. And these computers can also, maybe it's a video server or movie sharing server. So these machines can upload the videos to this server and also download some videos as well. And of course, this can either go through the cloud or just through the internet, or just go straight to the home. So you can, because these machines are requesting for the services of this our video server. So the ones requesting for the services are called clients, right? So we have the clients. Who needs the services of a dedicated server in this particular case, which provides video services. It can also be email, right? Maybe we can put an email server where people say maybe they've got at unique.com, right? They've got something at unique.com. So if they open their browser and they log in, it gets taken to their account on our server, and they can write email, and then they can send to different places for them. We've got various types of servers. So basically, it's just dedicated machine providing some services. So as much as we have our own standalone operating systems working on our individual machine, for example, we also have the server operating systems that help to servers to manage their services. So the server operating system organizes and then coordinates how multiple users can access or share resources, as just explained. Then we have a network administrator, which will be the person that works with these servers, so the person managing the servers. And management simply means adding users, computers, and other resources that are needed as and when. And of course, doing installation, making sure it's well configured, making sure that it can suit the number of users it's intended for, and doing some daily maintenance on the server as well, and ensuring that, of course, it's secure. Additionally, we have, of course, we have the multi-user, so we can have several users with each one. When each user log in, they get a different interface to the operating system that they have. It's like logging in to have your own account in there, quite similar to the services as well, the way services work. But mostly these are private in terms of you can password protect them, or if it's a child account, you can have you can put parental rights on those kind of accounts as well. So they do require some level of security to access them, but not always. It depends on how you have configured them. And so that takes us to the type of operating system. And when I was explaining the services, I did refer to our own personal computers, such as running the operating system, such as Windows, Mac iOS, as our standalone operating system, where you have also have the server operating system working on there. Then mobile devices like tablets and other things, they are usually mobile. As we were talking earlier, we mentioned the Android interface being slightly different. So mobile devices do run, or it was iOS interface for PowerPoint, do run a different type of operating system called embedded operating system. The embedded operating systems, because embedded devices do not have as much resources as, let's say, a whole desktop or other larger computers, they normally are lightweight. So they are designed to take less memory, and also they are designed to take less resources, but to be as powerful as possible. So we say some examples of standalone operating system like Windows 10, Catalina, Mac OS, the latest version of it. You've got Unix, you've got Linux, you've got Fedora, you've got Ubuntu, You've got various types that you can use as well. But these same companies also do have their server versions that we can also talk about. But then if we take Windows alone, you notice Windows 10, we have the home version, we've got the pro version, we've got enterprise version. Of course, you've got the embedded ones that you can also use. You've got the mobile one. I think it's the mobile one, if you have the Surface Pro as well, because it has the touch features and other things, it may give you some additional features and all those kind of things. You've got enterprise, you've got the IoT ones as well. The IoT will give you easy connectivity. You probably have Azure connectivity or link in there, but if you do connectivity to Bluetooth and other external devices. We mentioned earlier that the OS gives us access to firewall security. So in terms of security, things like being firewall, and my way of describing firewall is that if you have a wall, I don't know if you've ever watched the Emoji Movie. If you have watched the Emoji Movie, kind of give a very good illustration of how firewalls work, right? So pretty much it is a wall, and if you have a door in the wall, then it means that you have access to that particular door. So you can call this door a port, and if, let's say, it's port 8080 and we have opened it to a particular application, so what that means is that this application, let's say the browser is allowed to use port 8080, for example. So if someone is trying to get access into my computer, you need to go through this door or an open door in order to break into the computer, or to get into the computer in and out of it, right? So in this case, we've only opened 8080 in our wall. So if somebody tried to hack, maybe using port 90, for example, because it's unidentified and it has not been enabled, firewall will block it. So we wouldn't have access to the machine, similar to like working with proxies and other things. Additionally, it gives us other features like media player, and also some cool tools that we can use, including DVD maker and other things. So standalone operating system dedicated to your machine, so reliable, and in terms of its performance, nobody else is logged into it. So basically, you kind of get what you pay for, right? So if you are using your machine and you bought like a really powerful computer to support the right operating system, then you're going to get the right performance that you are using. And of course, it's got some more room in terms of resources compared to embedded ones. And then, of course, it can be secure. So pretty much you've got things like Windows Defender coming with some new machines, and you don't even have to pay for it. You can improve the firewalls, you can configure it to suit your need, and in terms of managing information, it's a lot easier. Getting better appearance and navigation. Some server operating systems just give you the DOS interface or the terminal window, and it's just simply test, no graphical thing going on there. And it feels like you need a PhD to do that, to manage it. That's why you have something like a network administrator. And I didn't mean you do need a PhD to manage it, no. But it's just how it feels like. But with standalone OS, nice user interface, the graphical user interface that you can make use of, and of course gives you access to communication resources and the internet. Can I double check to see whether you have a question for me? Any question for me? Or take silence as golden. Okay, so more examples, standalone operating system. We've already mentioned the Windows and Mac, and earlier on, in the earlier weeks, we watched something on Unix as well. So Unix X multitasking, and they did separate the kernel from the remainder of the operating system to make it a lot easy. So it's sort of earlier versions of what eventually became an open source as well. So Mac and then Linux both based on Unix, but Linux is open source, so people can use. So the Mac OS, of course, it belongs to the Apple. So basically, not open source. But open source simply means that other people can download the source code and they can contribute to it as long as they stick to the licensing rules in terms of the open source licensing rules. So for several operating systems, you've got examples. Like I said, the same companies popping up. You see Windows, Unix, Linux having their server version as well. So if you can download Ubuntu server, it just gives you the DOS interface or the terminal window that you can use to configure things. And of course, other companies popping in with Solaris and then NetWare as well that you can use. Just examples of some server operating system and awareness of them in there. Right. So most editions include a Hyper-V, which is for hyper-virtualization. So if you have something like one server computer, another server computer, or a rack of servers. When you see the server rooms, you've got racks of powerful computers sitting there, and it appears as if they are all working as if they were one supercomputer, right? So you don't really have to identify which particular one have I saved my data to. To you, it's just become a cloud. But what is happening in there is that there is virtualization going on, which simply means making them work as if they were one, but it actually is not real. And what help with that is the Hyper-V and the virtualization technology happening in the background. Then the embedded operating systems examples. If you use Windows Phone, if you use Android, if you use an Android phone, you have used an embedded operating system before. Android open source, and of course you can. If you use Apple, you've got the iPhone iOS as well. Palm OS, a slightly older technology. BlackBerry, also older technology. And if you have used a Raspberry Pi before, you have used an embedded Linux, which is like just basically Linux by a lightweight version to run on a tiny computer that costs like £32 or $32. So some wide examples of embedded systems which have their own. Right. Do apologize for that. That was the fire alarm going on. So some dedicated machines. Basically, embedded systems are things that have computers hidden in there, but you don't interact with them the same way that you interact with your desktop, or laptop, where you have the keyboard and everything to interact with. So examples: mobile phones, sewing machine, smart sewing machine. I'll say train ticket machine. Sorry, was there a question for me? Someone has the microphone on. Train ticket machine and other things. If you're trying to talk to me, we can't hear you, so put your question in the chat window and kindly mute for us. Right. Then that takes us to utility programs, and we did watch something on utility programs, but basically they are just system software that allow the user to perform or maintain maintenance tasks, right? So things like zipping a file, if you want to put several files together in one file. Tochi, remind me the attendance after this session, please. So if you want to put a group of files in a zip file or just put them together, that's a utility program. Something like WinZip allowing you to do that. The examples, also other things like the defragmenter itself, it allows you to manage your hard disks, or the disk manager. All these are examples of utility programs because they allow you to do some maintenance type of tasks or work. So few examples, we have file manager when you open file or open documents. Typical example you see on there. If it is Mac, you can just say new file and then you open a new folder for you, and that you can work with from there as well. So we can use it to copy and then move things around. Things we've seen before. We can use the search utility to find things. Kindly mute for us. It will be very helpful. So you can use the search file to find things easily, delete them, or to add more things. Another utility and a few more image viewer and then also uninstall, like add, remove programs. Disk cleanup for cleaning up your disks, system restore, all those kind of utilities. We've mentioned the defragmenter, which helps you to reorganize things on the hard drive and to make it run faster, backing up files on your computer, for example. And of course, other things like screensaver, when you leave the machine you can change the settings. When you leave the machine for a while, you can set it up in such a way that maybe you get a moving image, or you get several images playing, or you get a blank screen, just to keep the screen occupied or saved. You've got firewall. We've talked about firewall to sort of stop unauthorized access to your computer. That would take us to a few things with regards to what a virus is, right? So virus is intended to harm your computer, or intended to cause a nuisance, really. So they could potentially harm your computer or computer programs that affect your computer negatively. Of course, they are written at some point, or probably evolved by now with AI and other things, right? So you have different types of viruses that you can have. You can have a worm, Trojan horse, or then of course you have an antivirus program that takes care of those. So a worm, basically, the program or the software continuously copy itself. I quite remember I had a similar one, which would just fill out my hard drive space. And no matter what I do, my hard drive fills up so easily like that. And that was a long time ago on a Windows machine as well. Whilst the Trojan horse will hide itself and make itself looks like a genuine software, genuine software, and then when you double click, then of course the virus will be running in the background and other things. The antivirus protects your machine from these viruses. Examples of an antivirus: Kaspersky antivirus, got Norton antivirus, and other things that you can use. Signs of a virus infection: if you're getting unusual messages or something's pop up randomly, especially when you're on a browser. You've got, of course, some websites do have a lot of pop-ups, but things open randomly on your computer, music playing randomly, your memory is getting too used to. I've given an example, a program file, some things are missing on your computer. Suddenly things you have genuinely saved are becoming like hidden on your computer file and other things. These are normally signs of viruses that you have, right? So you can have a spyware, which is a program that is placed on your computer without your knowledge. And these spyware is like a spy, really spying on you, getting information about what you're doing, and then sending it across. And some things like keypad loggers, especially taking snapshots of your screen when you are on bank websites and other things, and all those kind of things. Right, so to get rid of that, you can use a spyware remover to get rid of them. And also you may have an adware, which is also a virus that basically looks at just pop-up advertisement or unnecessary things add to the current page that you are on. And to get rid of that, you can use an adware remover. So few things, just wrapping up, actually almost finishing with the slides. So filters, you can make use of filters to get rid of unnecessary things. So things like, you can have things like a pop-up blocker, for example, to block pop-ups from coming up, or to block some adware. So some phishing filters, so basically just getting rid of unnecessary things, filtering websites, and also like things like anti-spam programs, getting rid of spam messages and other things. So filter, basically getting rid of the unnecessary things so you can have the important things, right? So other utility programs, file compression utility programs, we've mentioned like zip files and other things. And of course in Windows, on Mac, I think you can have archive, compress, and other things. And you can actually convert video files from one form to another too as well, to make it smaller and other things that you can watch. But sometimes you lose the quality as well. We have mentioned media player. We watch movies and other things. We've mentioned Nero antivirus as an example, and you can also use Nero Nero software to burn hard disks. But basically, these days most people use USB or external storage, which is just copy and paste to burn file onto a disk drive, not a hard disk, right? So basically, just copying stuff onto a disk drive, optical disk drive. So other utility programs, quite a few utility programs that we can use, and we have mentioned quite a number of them, and that would take us to the end of the session. So brief summary, what we have covered: basically system software. We've covered operating system. We have also looked at utility programs as well, but we did spend some time on the functions of the operating system, and we have also looked at standalone operating system, server operating system, and embedded operating systems.